we're going to be talking about a two-piece shirt collar. A two-piece shirt collar is the nicest fit of a shirt collar, and we're going to work this one out from quite a simple draft. There are more complicated ways you can do it, but let's keep it simple for today. So again, you're going to need that measurement, the measurements that we took when we were doing the stand collar, which is the measurement of the back neck and the measurement of the front neck. So let's start with a straight line that will give us a chance to use those measurements. You're really going to want to use this film in conjunction with the instruction sheets that I've put on canvas, and that will be on the wall at the studio from Friday. Otherwise it can just seem a little bit complicated. Okay, so I'm going in with those exact same measurements. So we're going to have the back neck 8.7, the front at 12.8, which equates to the measurements taken from the block, with the front neck being lowered by 0.5. We're also going to add on for the button wrap later. So the collar basically is your classic shirt collar. So it'll fit nice and close at the neck there. It'll come down. In the drawing it's not going to look much different to that last one that we did. It'll come down like so, and it will have a button wrap, but it'll be a really lovely fit around the neck. There we go. We'll carry on with buttons. Again, there's lots of leeway for doing interesting things with a collar, but that's for you to find out, really. So this is our centre front, this is our centre back, this is our shoulder seam. Now what I want you to do at the centre front is I'm going to get you to raise up by 1.5, like so, and you are then going to create a smooth curve that runs from your shoulder seam to that 1.5 measurement, like so. So that's our centre front still, and we have that curve. Now what that curve is going to give us eventually is a curved band, not unlike the stand collar that we made earlier. Okay, we've got that in position. I'm going to draw at a right angle from that curve, the new curve, up by 2 centimetres. So I'm saying 2 centimetres is going to be the width of my collar stand, which is fairly narrow, really. Shall I change my mind and make it 2.5? I'm going to change my mind and make it 2.5. That area, the height of your collar stand, the depth of the fall of the collar, these are all design issues. So how high up your neck it comes, how far it then falls down here, are design issues, and they are something that as a designer you're going to want to play about with. Okay, so I'm now going to, so that was at 2.5, wasn't it? So I'm going to carry on. I'm going to use my pattern master to put in a line that follows that curve at 2.5 centimetres, because that is my collar stand. I'm going to extend this front line here to accommodate the button stand. Button stands are happening in the next session, so take my word for it for this at the moment. I'm just going to extend it by 1.5. So from that top edge, I'm going to curve down through that 1.5. Just imagine that on that centre line, it's either going to have a button or a buttonhole, and that is what's happening there. Okay, now for the top edge. Because we've raised by 1.5 here, we need a gap now. We're creating a gap on the centre back line at 3 centimetres. So it's twice that measurement, 3 centimetres. And we are wanting to square off until such time as we line up with the shoulder seam. And then we want to replicate this curve, so like a mirror image of that curve. Again, it's really handy using your pattern master to replicate that curve. This bit here is not going to be anything now, that's a gap between pattern pieces. Now we need to talk about what the drop's going to be on this. So I'm saying I'm going to have a drop of I don't know, 7 centimetres. I'll have a 7 centimetre drop. It could be anything from 4 if you're making a really narrow collar, probably up to maybe 8, but at the centre back it would never be really, really long. But again, for the designers amongst you, that's an area that you can play with. Okay, I am continuing that line, so I'm squaring off at the centre back and I'm continuing to a point that's in line with my original centre front, but I'm going to extend that by 1 centimetre. I'm going to join that extension to the centre front of the stand for the collar. I'm going to go beyond the back collar depth by 2 centimetres, and I'm going to run that back in to some point before it hits the shoulder seam. And that's our 2-piece shirt collar drafted. But now, of course, we have to do the same as we've done on all the other collars, and for the collar or the fall, we are going to need to have an under collar. So as per all the other ones, I'm coming down by about 0.4, as we get to the point of the collar. I'm taking it to nothing. This is one of the things that's really only going to make sense to you, I think, when you see the collars made up. So just bear with me until that point happens in your next session after this. Okay, time to trace off. Is that going to be enough? I don't think so. Oh, no. See if it'll be enough for the stand. No. Okay, so we're going to end up with 3 pattern pieces to make this 2-piece collar. We're going to end up with a pattern piece for the stand. So let's get that drawn out now. Start with the centre back. We're going to need a notch top and bottom there where the excuse me, where the shoulder seam is. And we're going to need notch top and bottom where the centre front is. This needs to be folded so we have the whole pattern. We are going to have a centimetre seam allowance along the neck edge, just like we have done with all the others. And we're going to have 0.5 around the rest. Oh, just found a very nice patch on the Pattern Master for achieving that. Okay, that's done and dusted. You really do need to pin these two together to cut them out. I haven't got a pin to hand. Okay, so you are going to be notching the seam allowance, the centre front, the shoulder seam, the centre back. Now, all those happen on the neck edge. On the top edge you'll do the centre back, where the shoulder seam is, where the centre front is. Now, for annotation on this, this is the two-piece collar. It's the collar stand. You are going to be cutting, cut two. Because they're symmetrical and it's one piece, you don't have to say one pair, you can say cut two. Both of those should be fused, so plus fuse. It was a size 10, wasn't it? Grain line can run with the centre back, or it can run at a right angle to it. I'm going to put this one at a right angle just to ring the changes. Okay, so that's what our one pattern piece that looks like this. Now we need to have a top collar and an under collar. I'm going to start with the top collar. So obviously it doesn't really matter which you start with. I'm going to mark the centre back. You're going to draw along that curve. You're ignoring that sort of eye-shaped piece that I crossed out earlier. So this is the top collar, so this is the bigger one that I'm drawing on. This is top collar for the two-piece shirt collar. You're going to cut 1 plus 1 fuse. I'm going to have the grain on this running with the centre back. Now, what's going to be slightly different on this one is because we've only got 0.5 around the top of the collar stand, the seam allowance on this collar is going to be 0.5 all the way around. So whereas the other collars, which have been being attached to the neck, have a centimetre on the neck edge, this collar, this part of this collar doesn't have a neck edge, it gets attached into the stand. So this is going to have 0.5 all the way around. you will notch at the centre back on both edges. You will put a notch here, which is where the shoulder seam is, and you will do 2 tiny notches to mark where the seam allowances are. So that's 1 piece, 2 pieces, and now you need your undercollar. So to achieve the undercollar, because I can't cut a piece of paper the right size, I'm going to sellotape this, sellotape some together. Okay, let's do the undercollar. So it's exactly the same as the top collar for the centre back. It's exactly the same as the top collar along its lower edge. The edge is going to get attached to the collar stand. It's exactly the same on that edge, but then it's that little bit shorter along the top edge. I'm going to trace that through more carefully than I'm doing, obviously, and you're going to be doing it in a nice fine pencil. So exactly the same as the top collar, it's going to have a centimetre seam allowance around all the way, for the same reasons that the top collar had a centimetre seam allowance all the way around. It's very handy in this instance that because of the extra curve you get on the top edge from the reduction in width, this collar could become a little bit confusing about which way up you'd be sewing it. So it's very handy that on the edge that gets attached to the stand you've got 2 notches. You'll have the one at the shoulder and the one at the centre back, and on the top edge of it, or the leaf edge of it, you've only got 1 notch, so that should help you to always know which bit's which, even though they are confusingly similar, or potentially confusingly similar. I'm going to have the grain running with the centre back. So this is the undercollar for the 2-piece two-piece shirt collar. 2-piece shirt collar. It's going to be cut 1. You could decide not to have fuse on this. I always like both my bits of collar fused, I must say. So I'm saying plus fuse. Boom, done. So that will give you a really pretty collar. It's a really nice fit of the collar. And again, this area of the collar is where you get to do a lot of designing. You've got lots of options. Also, what happens with the stand, you have options. Okay, I'll be looking forward to see what you do with that in your next project. But for your tech folder, what you'll need is your workings out and your 3 pieces of collar. Thank you.